are listening to a free version of the Majority Report with Sam Steyer. To support the show and get another 15 minutes of daily program, go to majority.fm, please.
The Majority Report with Sam Steyer, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday, Tuesday, Casual Tuesday, Wednesday, Casual Hump Day, Thursday, Casual Thurs, that's what we call it, and Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Steyer.
It is Friday, January 10th, 2020. My name is Sam Steyer. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, it's Casual Friday, folks, starting a little early today. Ben Dixon from the Benjamin Dixon Show will be joining us. Also on the program today, the House passes a resolution under the War Powers Act to require congressional approval for war with Iran, but not super tight. First step. Meanwhile, it appears that the Ukrainian airline shot down in the midst of Iran's response to our assassination of Soleimani was shot down accidentally by the Iranians. Mitch McConnell is looking to get articles of impeachment by next week, according to him. And he threatens to dismiss impeachment without those same articles. Meanwhile, a broad spectrum of the Democratic caucus wants a pro-labor bill to get a vote on the floor. Nancy Pelosi seems to be standing in the way.
Weird. Shock.
And it's a broad spectrum. I mean, Max Rose to AOC. Elections have consequences, ladies and gentlemen. 150,000 people will get health care as a Democratic governor expands Medicaid in Kansas. Gavin Newsom unveils a massive generic drug initiative and drug purchasing initiative in California. And Governor Nixon comes through again. New York State Senate passes automatic voter registration now on to the Assembly, but I imagine it's going to pass there. Sanders calls for an end to annual standardized testing. And a majority of Americans favor wealth tax on the uber rich. Imagine that. And the Clinton inquiry. Uranium One, the Clinton Foundation, the emails, all of it ends with nothing. And, of course, it's that time, you'll recall that Trey Gowdy and I agree on something. Tom Steyer has bought himself back into the race, apparently, and Mike Bloomberg has his own NDA and women problem. All that and more, if that's at all humanly possible, on today's program. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. It's Casual Friday. I am wearing a soft-collared shirt, and but also a sweater because it is that time of year. Although tomorrow it's supposed to be 60 degrees in New York, which, of course, is typical for mid-January, I should say. Generally, we don't get our 60-degree day until mid-February, as in the past, but rather disturbing. sure it's just a fluke. Don't worry about a thing, folks. Don't worry about a thing. Also, just remind you, this show relies on its support from its members. That means folks like you who are listening to the show. Maybe you listen to it once or twice a week. Maybe you listen to it 3 times a week, 4 times a week, 5 times a week, and you're not a member? Seriously? I doubt that. But even if it's 1 or 2 times a week, you want to support the program, head over to jointhemajorityreport.com, sign up, become a member. You will get the free show free of ads. And then you will also get the fun half, also free of ads. And you'll be keeping the show alive. JoinTheMajorityReport.com. As always, if you are someone who wants the extra content, but you are going through a tough time right now financially, or we get people who are headed into retirement. They're now on a fixed income, and the show becomes, getting the extra content becomes even that much more, enjoyable, and they have more time to enjoy it, but they have less resources. Send us an email at majorityreporters@gmail.com. We will lock no one out for finances. No one. Also, don't forget the AM Quickie is live. You can check it out at amquickie.com. Just signing up to subscribe to that is a big help to us, but I know you'll enjoy it. We're working on a couple of things that I think are going to kick it up a notch over the next couple of weeks. But a great way to keep in touch with the news from we're trying to make it more like a news brief, but we are also adding a little bit of judgment to the news. We're not going to pretend that just because the administration says we had every right to bomb Iran, that's the case. So if you're used to listening to NPR news briefs,
fake quickie.
If you're used to listening to NPR briefs and you want to listen to a fake a news quickie, amquickie.com to sign up. The other day, I had read from a Time magazine article about how to talk to your kids about our assassination of Soleimani. Now, of course, Time didn't write assassination, but I had mentioned that not only did I guess it was last Friday, get a text from my daughter, who's a 14-year-old, Dad, is there going to be World War III while she's in school? I don't know why they let her use their phones there, but it's high school and they can't control them. But it wasn't just my daughter. I heard from other people, kids as young as 6, 7, 8, worried that we were about to get into a war. And, you're that age. It's harder for you to appreciate that, when America gets into war, everybody else suffers significantly more than we do. We go around and all we get is sort of just war rhetoric. But it's good that they're concerned. And so I read that Time magazine. So I was searching around. I stumbled across that Time magazine thing where it talked about the history that Iran and the United States have. And of course, it starts in 1979 when, for whatever reason, just no reason, the Iranians took over our embassy and held 52 people hostage. Just because.
Because of the Quran.
Probably the Quran. We don't know. It's just that maybe it's
Quran partying.
U.S. experts will tell us that they're just so used to war that if they're not engaged in hostilities, they just get bored and they need to get right into
it's our martyrdom culture.
Yeah. So, it gave me the opportunity to talk about 1953 and, our history, at least in Iran, narrowly in Iran, although you could find other examples of basically getting rid of their democracy and installing a monarch/dictator who immiserated a lot of people. And it created blowback in their society. And of course, the other thing now that we have is the Iranians accidentally appeared to have shot down a Ukrainian airliner with 170 people in it. This was in the midst of the attack they were launching in response to the assassination of Soleimani. And, of course, we have ships off their coast, Straits of Hormuz. And whenever you have this type of warfare, things get confused and whatnot, and people are trigger happy and anxious. Here's Charlie Kirk saying, if Iran did indeed shoot down a Ukrainian plane tonight, they committed a war crime, murdering 170 innocent people while they were trying to avenge the death of a murderous genocidal maniac. The Iran regime is beyond evil. Now, I'm not sure that Charlie Kirk wants that to be the standard for what is beyond evil. And the Fox people today on Fox and Friends wanted to talk about this too, how horrific it was. Like, can you imagine, says, what's his name? Steve Doocy. Can you imagine what would happen if we did something like that? Now, unfortunately for Doocy, they allowed Geraldo Rivera, who's the only person who will tell anybody even a semblance of the truth on that network, onto his show. Hannity's smart enough not to book this guy. They don't want to book him in prime time, but they still bring him on in the morning just to pretend like, and I don't know how long that's going to last after stuff like this.
Geraldo, can you imagine if the United States of America accidentally shot down a jetliner?
Well, you know, Steve, we did in 1988. It was an international, a big, well, not a scandal, but a big debate.
You paid a lot of money.
Our guided missile frigate, Vincennes, in the Gulf there, shot down an Iranian passenger liner. 290 died, including over 60 children. And it was something that it took us years to live down. And we did, as Brian suggested, pay tremendous compensation. You know, the fog of war is awful. Terrible things happen to good people.
Pause it. Did you hear him saying, like, exactly? Yes. No, of course. We paid a lot of money. Right. Of course. Right. Like, like, I mean, do you, like, I don't understand what is going through Steve Doocy's mind? Yeah. Right? Like
nothing.
I've came up with this idea of, like, can you imagine if we did something like this? We did do that. Actually, it was worse. More people died.
Isn't that incredible?
A lot of kids. And we denied it for years. For years. Well, right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, we lived it down for a long time. Yep. Right. It's just, it's stunning.
How does he not remember that? I mean, I was born in 1988.
Oh, dude, he forgot it 3 minutes after it happened. He may have never been aware of it. I mean, the fact is that it was like first of all, there was just simply not as much news. And so when there was a story that it was uncomfortable for America to grapple with, these things could go away much easier. And certainly, like, we don't remember, as a nation, we don't remember the fact that we started a war in Iraq at this point. So the Vincennes, it's like, oh, we brought on like a deep historian, Geraldo Rivera, to come and tell us.
He is the deep historian of this crew. I also love that. But there is just something amazing when your one-to-one stupid like comparison happens to just be exactly the one. Right. Like, it's just like, could you bet? What if we did something like blow a civilian airliner out of the sky? I mean,
Actually, more people died in that one.
I guess we pay them a lot of money.
Yeah.
So they better be getting their checkbook out.
Well, that's the
those
thing,
Iranians.
That's the thing that's sort of amazing. Like, Kilmeade is sitting there going, like, yeah, we paid him a lot of money. And I frankly, is that true?
I don't know. I need to check that. But what I do know, and I don't know what the Iranian statement on this has been yet, is I do know that I mentioned this yesterday, that George Herbert Walker Bush said we never apologize as Americans, because when this happened, he was fighting the wimp factor. And part of how you fight the wimp factor is make very clear that you're not going to apologize for blowing a civilian airliner out of the sky. It was all true. Could you imagine if Rouhani came out and was just like, we are not weak, we don't apologize.
Sorry, not sorry.
Sorry, not sorry.
So it took 7 years And in 1996, the government of the United States and Iran reached a settlement at the International Court of Justice, which included the statement the United States recognized the aerial incident of July 3rd, 1988 as a terrible human tragedy and expressed deep regret over the loss of lives caused.
7 years.
As part of the settlement, even though the U.S. did not admit legal liability or formally apologize, it agreed to pay $61 million. There you go.
I'll never apologize for the United States of America. Ever. I don't care what the facts are.
That's the quote.
Yep. $61 million for those 290 lives that were lost. And I can assure you that Iran will pay more ultimately for this. But the idea that Ducey, goes into this segment, is it possible that he had no idea and just happened to stumble across that question? Or is it like, this would be a good idea for me to ask this question, which would make me look like a total idiot? It's unbelievable.
Geraldo, can you imagine if the United States of America accidentally shot down a jetliner?
Well, Steve, we did in 1988. It was an international, a big, well, not a scandal, but a big debate.
You paid a lot of money.
Our guided missile frigate,
$61 million
in the Gulf. They
a lot
shot
of money.
down an Iranian passenger liner. 290 died, including over 60 children. And it was something that it took us years to live down, and we did, as Brian suggested, pay tremendous compensation.
It took us a long time to live that down.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's the bit that I think, to the question, like, how do people not remember these things? It's that we've been given license and permission to forget about it because we paid money.
Right. We paid almost as much as Tom Steyer spent in his ad budget for 3 months in the Midwest.
Tom Steyer should cut the Iranians a check. This is another thing that he could do that would be more useful with his money. The Tom Steyer Apology Fund for the remaining relatives of the victims of that plane bombing.
You can pay for 2 years of LeBron paying for your basketball team with $60 million.
Yeah, exactly. What do we got here? Oh, sorry. I lost the...
You need it?
Yeah, no, I got this. Okay, sorry. Here we are. Hey, folks. The makers of Quip electric toothbrush want you to know the one single discovery that matters most for dental care. In fact, you don't even need this from Quip because you hear this from me. You got to do it on a regular basis. You have to have good habits. This is why it's so important to get your kids, and it's a pain in the ass to get your kids to brush their teeth on a regular basis. But you got to do it. Actually, Quip has got... They don't mention it here, but they have child-sized things that has actually made it much easier because now Saul and I can do it together. And because the whole thing with kids is you get them to time it out by doing the alphabet, and then they don't realize that it's about the amount of time not getting through the alphabet, so they just race through it. But the beauty about Quip is that it gets you brushing for the minimum amount of time that you need to, which is 2 minutes. You got to do it twice a day. You got to floss regularly, no matter what brand you use. But the thing is about Quip is it makes it easy and simple with an electric toothbrush to get the job done. Why does it make it simpler? Because of the design of the Quip toothbrush. It's like more or less like a regular toothbrush. So you don't have a huge device on your sink and it's knocking over or it hasn't been charged or whatever it is. No excuse. And you can travel with the Quip as easily as you do any type of regular toothbrush. Plus, in addition to the sonic vibrations, it has a built-in timer. So you do the 2 minutes. It actually has a timer every 30 seconds, too. It gives you a little indication so you switch sides. The Quip floss dispenser comes with pre-marked string to help you use just enough. And the best part, Quip delivers a fresh brush heads, floss, and toothpaste refills to your doorstep every 3 months with free shipping. So your routine is always right. You don't like, oh, I ran out. I'll get it in a week. And then you forget and blah, blah, blah. Join over 3 million healthy mouths today and get Quip starting at $25. This is the gift I got from my sister and her dentist wanted to thank me. If you go to getquip.com/majority, getquip.com/majority, right now, you're going to get your first refill free. That's your first refill free at getquip.com/majority. GETQUIP.com/majority. Quip, the good habits company. Also, the Majority Report is possible in part thanks to sponsors like Skillshare. And anyone who goes to skl.sh/Majority Report 5, I know that's a mouthful, but you can also find it in our YouTube description and our podcast description. You're going to get 2 entire months totally free access to Skillshare's entire library of thousands of online classes. So Skillshare is an online learning community for everyone from creatives to freelance to business owners to people who just want to get better at their hobby or learn a brand new hobby. Skillshare classes range from illustration, painting, graphic design, photography, video editing, web design, bookkeeping, marketing, productivity, everything in between. Skillshare's video lessons let you learn at your own pace. You can fit it into any schedule. They have classes for all skill levels, whether you're already a master of what you do or you're just getting started. I've been doing all sorts of Skillshares over the. I'm trying to think of what I did over the break. I did the lucid dreaming. What was the other one? Oh, I can't remember now. But it's awesome. It really is awesome. And I've been trying to do more and more. And there's stuff like, there's like little video programs that you can do, or programs you can learn about, like whether it's like, narrow stuff on how you do some animation, or you work with like, Premiere or something like that, where you can use, or you can learn, basics of photography that you can use just even with your iPhone. They have stuff like leadership and management, how to share ideas, how to develop your curiosity and creativity. They have marketing stuff and business analytics, which I keep telling myself I got to dig into because, analytics are relevant for what we do, but we don't ever spend any time on that. We got to get on that. But you got to check it out now. The best part is a membership is less than $10 a month. You can make 2020 where you explore new skills, you deepen existing passions, and get lost in creativity. A membership, again, gives you access to each and every class that they offer. So you're never going to run out of ways of, and things to watch and to learn. The Majority Report audience can enjoy 2 entire months of free membership to Skillshare with full access to all their classes. You go to skl.sh/Majority Report 5, the number 5. Like I say, we put a link in the podcast notes and under this video, if you're watching on YouTube, that is skl.sh/Majority Report 5. Check it out. All right, quick break. We're going to go talk to Ben Dixon, and we got a lot to cover today. We'll be right back after this. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report on the phone. It is a pleasure to welcome back to the program the proprietor of the Benjamin Dixon Show, Ben Dixon. Ben, welcome back to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me, Sam. Always a pleasure.
I can't believe it's been 3 months.
Yeah.
I don't see how that's possible, but assuming it is, Happy New Year. And we're going over what we should talk about today, and we basically have 4 top stories that could easily be, in any other era, they would be stories that we would be talking about for weeks. And of course, we'll have to give each one about 7 minutes because that's just the era that we're living in, and it's stunning. I mean, there's a story today about the and I'll talk about this later, but there's a story today about the Clinton investigation that was initiated under Jeff Sessions on Uranium One, on the email server, on the Clinton Global Initiative, all the incredible corruption that was embedded there. And nothing, zero. They announced, and apparently they've known this for years. But they just basically have finally put it to rest because the guy's like, look, it's been nice. I've been sitting in this office now for 2 years, but I'd like to go on with my life because there's nothing to do. And of course, how many, I don't want to get off track here, but how many people in this country have literally made a living in the pursuit of those things? Whether it's in right-wing media, whether it's in YouTube,
left-wing
media, whether it's, now that Schweitzer guy is coming out with, another book. People forget that the Clinton cash book was fully financed by Steve Bannon. One would expect a drop in our economy based upon that investigation ending, and I say this as someone who is, I was certainly not a fan of Hillary Clinton as a candidate, or in some of her policies and whatnot. But I mean, this is we're so far off the rails in this country. It's really sort of sometimes hard to sort of get a grasp on it.
That's part of the reason we have 4 major stories to talk about this morning. It's just we're in a different era. One of the things that with the Uranium One, I mean, anybody who looked at it objectively and actually sat down with and studied the players, you realize that there really was no there, but it became so sensationalized. Sean Hannity used to run that story every night. And then it got picked up by the right wing echo chamber, and then it got picked up by some people on the left. And quite honestly, this is going to be a minor footnote. People are going to still believe that there was some major level of corruption there, even though the case sounds like it's basically closed. But, when people latch on to things, this is the era. Counter to all the evidence, they are going to still believe by faith that there was something there.
Yep. And again, I'll talk about it more because I don't want to spend any more time on it with you. But that Uranium One thing, you could read into that in 5 minutes and see how ridiculous that whole charge was. You could read into it literally. And in fact, I will probably do it in 3 later. But let's start with this War Powers resolution. There is and this is something that I think, honestly, I feel like it could study for a year and a half and still not be fully clear on all this sort of loopholes that are here. But the broad strokes are that we had the War Powers Act of 1973, which is supposed to sort of reiterate that the President of the United States go to Congress and get within X amount of days, 30 days, in the event of any type of anything that could be construed as war. Now, war has become, because of technology, has become, sort of flattened and has changed, theoretically, right? It's not, and those technicalities as to what constitutes war. Is it war if the CIA assassinates somebody? Is it, right, even if it's with a missile? If they do it with a drone, it's not war. It's something else. Right. And But the War Powers Act says you have to come back to Congress, and there are specific resolutions that are passed in that reflect upon that. Basically, because you've had things like the AUMF, which sort of like carves out stuff from the War Powers Act. There were competing bills, one by Ilhan Omar and Barbara Lee, that was, I guess, the cousin of which was in the Senate under Tim Kaine. And then there was one, and that was about getting permission from Congress. And then there was one from Ro Khanna and Bernie Sanders in the House and the Senate, respectively, about cutting funding off for anything that had to deal with Iran. And Nancy Pelosi didn't like either one of those, and so had a third entrance into it by Elisse Slotkin, who is from Michigan, former CIA analyst and Defense Department official. And hers gives some wiggle room. So from a progressive standpoint, this is a first step. But it's a good first step, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's non-binding. So it's really a statement of them trying to reassert their powers. The biggest problem, though, Sam, is, as you outlined, with our drone program, with the CIA taking the lead on so many things, which gives them some wiggle room. The problem is there has been this expansion of power that the Congress has allowed. And you've talked about this ad nauseum. I mean, this is not just a problem with Donald Trump. This was a problem underneath Barack Obama. And, of course, famously, really a tremendous problem underneath George W. Bush, but both parties have been kind of complicit in seeing the powers of the presidency expand without the Congress actually asserting any of their authority. And so, this is, honestly, I don't want to downplay it. It is a first step. I was surprised to see Matt Gaetz actually support it. I was surprised to see any Republican support it. I think Justin Amash, he doesn't really consider himself a Republican anymore, so I could see him voting for it. But I was really surprised at that vote in particular because of how much he's always been in lockstep with the president. And so he's catching some backlash for that. But it just says that at least they're trying. Should we give them credit for trying? I guess.
Well, yeah. And I guess, some of the failure, I think, just comes from, I don't know, the media. I mean, even folks like us. I mean, do we have that Gaetz video? All right, let's play this Matt Gaetz video. Now, Matt Gaetz is a disingenuous, cretin, right-wing. I mean, there's nothing I can say that will articulate how despicable I think this guy is. And I have actually a decent amount of friends in Pensacola, Florida. That's where we do Ring of Fire out of. And he represents that district, and I've talked to different people there, and the guy's a loon. That area of the country is also has its own share of problems, I think, in terms of like ideology. But if we had a Fox News, let's say, when Donald Trump gets up last night, like he did in Ohio, and talks about, the Democrats want me to, go and talk to, I'm going to kill this guy, and then I got to go tell the Democrats. The Democrats right now would be talking about this is a bipartisan. Listen to Matt Gaetz here.
Come on. Yeah.
I take a backseat to no member of this body when it comes to defending the president. This resolution offers no criticism of the president, no critique. It doesn't criticize the president's attack on Soleimani. Matter of fact, this resolution doesn't even say Soleimani's name in it. Yet it does articulate our very robust basis for self-defense, at times even preemptory self-defense to defend our troops. And it also articulates our non-delegable duty as members of the United States Congress to speak to matters of war and peace. I represent more troops than any other member of this body. I buried one of them earlier today at Arlington. And that sergeant died a patriot and a hero. If the members of our armed services have the courage to go and fight and die in these wars, as Congress, we ought to have the courage to vote for them or against them. And I think it's ludicrous to suggest that we are impairing the troops from doing their job by not doing our job articulated in the Constitution to speak to these matters of war and peace. I support the president. Killing Soleimani was the right decision, but engaging in another forever war in the Middle East would be the wrong decision, and that's why I'm voting for this resolution.
All right. So, look, now, I think, what he was articulating was true, and I think it shows the sort of the problems with this version of this war powers resolution. But like, we'll take some baby steps here to constrain at least, to constrain the president. Never mind Donald Trump, but just the presidency.
Right.
But a decent political operation would be making hay out of the fact. And a press would immediately be going to Donald Trump right now and saying, hey, Matt Gaetz, Mike Lee, Rand Paul. I mean, these people are all disingenuous as far as I'm concerned. And if there was if they weren't completely boxed in, they would be doing something totally different. But they are. And so it should be exploited by society.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's actually a good point. And you mentioned it's also a problem with media. Like that slipped right by me. Like the whole narrative right now should be a bipartisan support for this bill, the passage of this bill. And but really, I think you also hit the nail on the head. It's also incumbent upon the Democratic leadership like this. I have not heard anyone say that. So shame on us, because it would be the number one way that we could pressure the president. Now, I don't think he's going to succumb to that pressure, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't, operate at the top of our political game. Right. So I definitely believe that. And honestly, like, it's hard for me to listen to that clip and not, I don't believe almost anything that Matt Gaetz says.
Agreed.
But I really honestly felt him on that clip, and he's going to pay a political price for it. I guess he is boxed in because of how many people he represents. But it's not going well for him today. We'll see how it plays out and if the president takes him to task for it.
The president might, but I think like in terms of his own district, he had to do that, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, the idea that Joe Lieberman can go on, not just, the media in general, but MSNBC, and it be evident, ostensibly brought on there because he's a Democrat who thinks that the Democrats are going wayward. Like, first off, I would like to remind everyone that Joe Lieberman left.
Yes.
Not left office, not as a Democrat, but as a Connecticut for Liebermanite, which I think was the name of his party that he ran on. And so but that is his existence. And his longtime support for a war with Iran is ignored. And he's trotted out as if there is some type of like bipartisan consensus that may agree with the president. But you have, never mind Lee, Rand Paul and Matt Gaetz, but, Justin Amash, who was kicked out of the Republican Party for having this sort of heterodoxy. I don't know. I mean, I think obviously more needs to be done on this. But give me your sense now of, and I anticipate there's going to be more retaliation from Iran, but just not in as public and an attributable way. And we're going to be back to where we were, although there's like some narrative that like we have finally constrained. Tom Cotton's out there. We finally, Iran is finally afraid of us again. This is how twisted. This is how twisted this stuff is, because the reason why they want a nuclear weapon, to the extent that they want one, was always because they're afraid of us.
Right.
And we had made a deal with them enough to say like, you don't need to have that level of fear. And it was the pulling out of the deal that made them afraid of us, not the killing of one of their generals.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, the killing of the general was like the most recent catalyst, and it really galvanized. Like, I think Donald Trump handed them something that even the moderates in Iran could not avoid. But to your point, though, anyone who's spinning this as a victory for Donald Trump is at the height of madness. And it's almost unthinkable that they could spin it this way, because Iran is boldened. They really played the president. I mean, they made their move and the president backed down. I'm grateful. So we have to be careful here. I'm extremely grateful that the president backed down. I know he created the mess, and I don't want to give him credit for doing the right thing out of the wrong decision in the first place. But this week could have played out totally different. And so when I say I'm grateful, it's really because even though Iran kind of made their move, they were emboldened, they did their thing, and the president backed down. I don't want to make that anyone think that's a signal that we should have responded and retaliated again. No. Everything played out this week the best way it could in this terrible timeline that we're living in. That being said, anyone who's trying to tell you that this was a victory for Donald Trump, they're really not reading the signals. I hope that this is the end of it. We need for this to be the end of it. But Iran was not weaker on the international stage, even if for the moral case, right? The moral case. Everyone on the international stage, we know Donald Trump is a moron, but we see this week that Iran came out as the rational actors, the one with a measured hand, the one that had a proportionate response, the people who are responsible not to kill anyone on that base. We'll leave the conversation about the airline off the table for a few seconds. And, they came off looking like the reasonable, rational actor in this conversation. And Donald Trump came off like a slurring buffoon. And so if nothing else on the moral case, they came out looking great on the international stage. We'll see how everything else plays out.
Right, I think that's true, and we've talked about earlier the downing of the Ukrainian airline, and I mean it's a horror show. 190 lives, and it's the stuff like this is bound to happen in the context of these type of exactly. Like sort of war or low level war, whatever you want to call it. We need to highlight this though, because I mean, frankly, and we'll pivot to impeachment in a second here. But I don't think that the line between, and the idea that we as a country are not completely on board with the idea that this was all about impeachment is absurd, at least for Donald Trump. Now, I do think that there has been a longstanding desire by Mike Pompeo and maybe Mike Pence, and Milley apparently is surprising everybody with his ability to go along with just about any bat crap crazy stuff that exists. But this story in the Wall Street Journal came out last night. I don't know if you had a chance to see this. It talks about Trump's new national security team making fast work of an Iran strike. And apparently this new team was cohesive. This new team being Secretary of Defense Mark Esper, the Raytheon executive, the new Joint of Chief Staff Mark Milley, who people are like, man, yeah, he's great. We can't believe it. He's not giving the president any pushback whatsoever. New National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien. I don't know much about him, but Mike Pompeo is a longtime lunatic. And so this piece, there's two things that stuck out for me in this piece. Lindsey Graham, Trump confidant who played golf with him when he was considering the strike, said the new advisors, quote, understand the president. They have chemistry amongst themselves. General Milley is the biggest surprise. He's much more willing to take a risk to achieve a goal. Now, I don't know what the goal was. Right. But then there was this. This is stunning. The way the strike was handled has drawn scrutiny from Democrats and some Republicans. Critics say the decision was hasty, considering the risk of all-out war. It was obviously incredibly hasty. They also question whether the intelligence that prompted the action was as clear-cut and alarming as the White House has said. Now, the way this is written, remember, folks, this is a Rupert Murdoch paper. The way this is written is, the sort of begrudging. People have walked out of these hearings saying, these intelligence assessments saying, like, there's nothing. Like, this is sophomoric. This is like high school crap. And see the move as doing little to further U.S. interest in the region. Of course, there's been no interest. So why do it? Why did Donald Trump, who I'm quite convinced, knows that a war with Iran is bad for him politically? Why did he do it? Mr. Trump, after the strike, told associates he was under pressure to deal with General Soleimani from GOP senators he views as important supporters in his coming impeachment trial in the Senate. This according to associates. Now, for people who don't read the news in the way that you and I read the news, the idea that Lindsey Graham, 3 graphs ahead of that statement, is placed as playing golf in the days before Soleimani is killed, and is saying he's happy with all the players involved and everybody's on the same page, suggests to me that Lindsey Graham, and I'm sure there are others, Tom Cotton is mentioned also in that same graph. He was looking for for Lindsey Graham to go in and quash impeachment and this was the price that he was going to pay, almost getting us into war. This is effed up. And the idea that hopefully this is going to get more attention. This came out last night, so maybe it'll get more attention. I don't know. But this is nuts. This is nutso territory.
Sam, I hope it gets more attention. I don't think that it will, because this is our normal. I hated that phrase when everything started off. We can't let this be the new normal. But by us saying that, it kind of became the new normal. What you just read off would otherwise grind an entire administration to a complete halt. And you're bringing it up on your independent media show, and I'm not sure. I'll have to check. I don't know who covered it on mainstream media, because this is just where we are now. To the substance of what you're saying, Lindsey Graham, along with I honestly had to do my best not to drag John McCain up from the grave and be grateful that he was not alive, because they have this bloodlust to go to war with Iran under any circumstance. Thank goodness John Bolton was out of the administration, but this even had the fingerprints of John Bolton on it. There is a concerted plan, an effort to undermine the regime there in Iran. I forgot the name of the plan, the New American Century that they've been planning.
Project for New American Century, yes.
They've been working on this for decades.
Yep.
And so they have not let that go. And in Donald Trump, they found the perfect person to implement their strategy, just like they said. They needed someone who could just sign off on it with enough working digits to sign off on their agenda. And they found him. They got him in a corner. Now, listen, I think Donald Trump, I'm not going to make Donald Trump the victim here, right? He's obviously operating in his own best political interest. At least he thought he was. And I don't think that he has enough working digits to do the calculus to see that this was going to be the best outcome. The best outcome was Iran retaliated and he has to back down. I don't think he played this all the way through. But at the same time, this faction has been waiting. I mean, Michael Flynn, the second week in office, the first week in office, came out and put Iran on notice. So, I mean, there's a big machine that has been trying to go to war with Iran for a very long time, and he's surrounded by them.
Yeah, I agree totally. And, this in another era.
Isn't Michael Bolton a singer?
Michael Bolton, right.
Yeah.
In another era, this revelation in the Wall Street Journal would be grounds for an impeachment.
Yes.
I mean, you're not supposed to come close to starting another massive regional war because you need Lindsey Graham to be really, really deliver a lot of rhetoric about why you shouldn't be impeached. I mean, that's what it comes down to. He's not even looking for a vote because Lindsey Graham can't afford to do anything but to vote to clear the president. But he just wants him in there to work hard to exonerate me. That's what's going on here.
Yeah, and the number of lives that are attached to that reckless and that very cavalier decision really just speaks to I don't know what type of character you actually have to be willing to put the number of we'd already dehumanized anyone who's not from the West, right? We don't really care as Americans about Iraqis or Iranians, right? But just in context of American lives, they're willing to risk just for the smallest political advantage. We've been saying it for a while. The Republican Party is a death cult, but most certainly the neoconservative branch of the Republican Party is most certainly a death cult that would have led to the lives of Americans dying and probably countless hundreds of thousands of Iranians dying. And not only that, but being in the Middle East and that region in perpetuity, because there's no coming back from that. Well,
one of the things I was on MSNBC this week, right when we were right as the Iranians were launching these missiles into this, the deserted part of our bases, apparently. And Steve Schmidt was on there, and I talked about this, earlier in the week at length. But this idea that we sit back as people and just watch, like these leaders do this stuff. Like it's just like we're watching Game of Thrones, right? Like we're just one of the people who live down below who are going to get fried by the flying dragons when they breathe fire. But that's the only time that we actually get any airtime, essentially, in the show. The rest of the time, the whole story is about these, this Game of Thrones that's happening, and we have no ability to in any way influence it. Like, when I read stuff like this, where some reporter apparently has talked to somebody is willing to admit that he did this because of he wanted Lindsey Graham to be stronger in the impeachment. I mean, Nancy Pelosi should get out there today and say, I'm not sending articles of impeachment to the Senate until someone explains to me what is going on here. Who is the president talking about? Which senators? Which Republican senators are the ones who are telling him, you got to attack Iran if you want me to defend you in the Senate? Like, that's not the way this is supposed to work. She should be out there holding up the Wall Street Journal and saying, this is the Wall Street Journal. Who are these people? And, who told this to the reporters, and what senators are they talking about? And how does the president respond to this? And I'm not sending anything over there until we investigate this. And the House should right now be subpoenaing John Bolton and get him in there and have his lawyers explain, like, oh, well, we'll go to a Senate subpoena, but we won't go to a House one. Like, what the like, this is just like madness. And to have other Democrats coming out and pressuring Pelosi to send this stuff, I want to see Mitch McConnell pass a bill that says we're just going to dismiss articles of impeachment without even seeing them. Go ahead and just bring up new ones. The idea that they could send these articles of impeachment, and there's no reason why the Democrats couldn't send further ones in the future. So it doesn't matter what Mitch McConnell does in the Senate about these things. I mean, this is just ridiculous to me.
I think I don't want to give anyone the benefit of the doubt in this case, but I think that we are so inundated. OK, here's what I'm trying to say. The source did their part. The journalists did their part. You're doing your part by bringing this to the attention of people. Who's not doing their part is whoever surrounding Pelosi at this point. And of course, Pelosi's smooth enough to make her own decisions. But if everyone is not clicking and doing their parts in this, then that doesn't happen. And I'm not trying to give Pelosi an excuse, but there's just so many things that don't happen unless everyone does their part. Someone around Pelosi has to push her to do exactly that, because you're right. This story is big enough. And yet it's the third one that you and I have talked about. That's just kind of the world that we're in. And if we don't push through this, right, if we don't all do our part, like I actually can make a phone call and send some text messages and to do our part to make sure that this operates the way it has to operate and that the line is drawn. To everything that you're saying about the Senate and the impeachment and everything else, I don't disagree with what Pelosi is doing at this point. Like, there is really no reason for her to send those articles over until the Senate comes on the record, because they've gone on the record publicly saying that this is just a game to them, that what their entire plans are. So she's making the right move. And I think people are getting a little skittish. They're a little afraid that the political impact is going to die down. But there's so many things that are happening in between then and now, right? There's so many other things. Iran just happened. This story just happened. There are plenty of places where the pressure can be applied again. There's really no reason to send it over to give Donald Trump a slam dunk victory.
And I understand that Nancy Pelosi is driving this thing, but there is another person who is ostensibly the leader of the Democrats in this country, right? There are two official. Obviously, people on the presidential campaign. I understand why they aren't necessarily caught up on this stuff, but there's two big people who have official leadership positions in the Democratic Party, and one of them is in the Senate. And ostensibly, it is one of his colleagues or multiple of his colleagues who are encouraging Donald Trump to go attack Iran. And in response, what they'll do is they will be boisterous in the event the articles of impeachment hit the Senate. And maybe Chuck Schumer should put down his to stop investigating the size of seatbelts on airliners or whatever, small piddling things that he's working on, and should get up and be a leader for the country, seeing as how he is in charge of the Democratic caucus in the U.S. Senate. Right? I mean, where is Chuck Schumer? Is he on vacation? Where is he vacationing? Is he still what is he showing up at work? Does he not have a staff? Is his staff not doing anything? Does he need to borrow an intern or something? I mean, do we have somebody in the office who can maybe spare some time for Chuck Schumer so they can do a little bit of research and do something?
Bro, I'm laughing so hard because I honestly forgot about Chuck Schumer. I mean, he's there. He's the second most powerful Democrat in the country right now in terms of being in elected office. And you're right. Like, where the hell is he on this? So it shouldn't even all fall to. That's what I mean when I say we all have to do our part, and we have some feckless people in positions, because you would completely forget that Chuck Schumer is even a thing.
I mean, is there honestly, if someone was to call up and say, "Look, I work in the Senate Hart Building or whatever building Chuck Schumer has his office in," and says, the weird thing is they're doing some construction in his building, and he hasn't been able to get in there for 3 months. Or he's been locked inside it and he hasn't been able to get out for 3 months. I would say, okay, well, that explains it. Because, I get news for you. Coming from New York, I happen to know Chuck Schumer can find a camera. He's quite good at that when he wants to. And so it's pretty stunning that he's just, completely sidelined on this whole thing. Chuck Schumer should be asking,
responsibility for sure, man.
Who in the Senate is telling the president to attack Iran and exchanging essentially. Oh, wait a second. I'm sorry. I just got to here's some breaking news. Wait a second. Yeah, here it is. Okay. He in late October, he proposed a $454 billion plan over 10 years to help shift the United States away from gasoline-powered vehicles by offering cash vouchers to help Americans buy cleaner vehicles. That's great. That's good. It's good that he put out that plan because, of course, there's nothing else going on right now. If you're going to put out, talk about putting out the most narrowly tailored symbolic legislation. I get why some people get cynical about symbolic legislation, but when you're talking about big, broad commitments that you want to make and hold Democrats to when they get power, I'm sorry. Yeah. 45 billion a year to help shift the United States, by offering cash vouchers. Fine. We can subsidize. How about we just subsidize the electric vehicle business instead of having to do it through the market as if we have the ACA is the template for all the stuff that we do. But the idea that this guy's spending time on this, how about spending time? We don't even have time to cover all the stuff that we need to on a 3-hour show every day. And he finds time to come up with a bill that is going to be, cobwebbed, and it's just going to something that he can put on his website. I mean, give me a freaking break.
Sam, you're in rare form today, man. I am enjoying
I'm sorry.
You're right.
Nuts.
Your righteous indignation is right. But, man, that was a great segment. I'm glad to be a part of that one.
Well, I'm glad you're here, too. Let's talk a little bit about the other thing that, this is, I had to read this a couple of times because we heard for a long time that Nancy Pelosi was not going to bring up impeachment because we need to get things done. And I'm afraid of our frontline Democrats. They're going to lose in 2020. And so we need to get things done. That's what Cheryl Booth is telling you. We need to get things done. We don't have time for impeachment. Yet it has gotten so bad, apparently, that on this, what is known as the PRO Act, which is the Protecting the Right to Organize Act, right? This is a pro-labor bill. Now, it's one thing if it's like, and I don't think it's the right thing, but I'm saying like the story makes some sense. At least you can grok it if it's just like, oh well, the only the Congressional Progressive Caucus wants this, and this is just AOC is out there alone, and she's the only one who wants this, and that's why Pelosi, I got to protect my frontline things. Well, apparently it's gotten so bad that 76 Democratic members of the House, led by freshmen serving in swing districts. That's what I was saying. Max Rose, who is from Staten Island, which is essentially like, I don't know, it's like mid, huh? He voted against the Slotkin resolution. I mean, that's how right wing that it is. He has signed this. It passed the Labor Committee on September 25th. Progressives and union leaders want it brought to the full floor, right? This is after like the unions went on board with this new crappy NAFTA 2.0 garbage. And apparently Pelosi's been sort of dragging her feet, doesn't want to do it, to the point where you had to have like these guys, Jared Golden of Maine and Max Rose of New York, red to blue seats, sign this letter as well as AOC. I mean, this is the disdain for labor. I mean, and I don't know if it's just a disdain for labor, because I'm not convinced that there's a problem with the leadership of maybe some of these major unions, that they have the same sort of like, they operate under the same iron law of institutions as Nancy Pelosi, which is like, I want to stay in power. And then the power of my union or the power of the labor movement generally is secondary to my staying in power. I'm not convinced that's not part of this.
Yeah. That's interesting. I actually hadn't considered that second part, because my gut instinct is that this is just a reaction of where the Democratic Party is as a whole, not just the party, but the people surrounding the apparatus, the think tanks, the consultants who are, as much as they proclaim to be progressive, they take anti-union moves. They make anti-union moves quite often. We see it in progressive media outlets. I mean, I'm not surprised that they have drugged their feet on this. I really would be surprised to see it go down. Steny Hoyer tweeted out that he's going to present the legislation. So let's see. I think the pressure is mounting to a point where they can't ignore it anymore. But I just think that there's so many anti-union forces surrounding the Democratic Party, from every level. I mean, we see that when the rubber meets the road and people try to unionize, everyone who yells progressive and liberal and everything else, when it's their organization, they're quick to crush those movements as well. So I just think that it's a problem across the board, even for people who claim to be leftist or progressive or whatever they call themselves today. Yeah, I know. The only thing that is really like bringing me any type of hope is just sort of watching what's happening with a lot of those teachers movements and and whatnot. Like that to me, seems to be the most encouraging of stuff. See, that's the source. I mean, I'm glad you brought that up, right? Because it is the organizing power. It's the whole spirit of the unions in the first place, right? That's going to be the pressure. The pressure has to come from the bottom up, even within union leadership, right? Some of the things that you positioned, I'm going to chew on that a little more. But the pressure from the bottom up has to be extremely loud. And thankfully, that's where we are, right? We're at the position where we have stopped waiting on anything from the top down, because top down preserves power. That's all they do, no matter who they are, no matter what label they have. They ultimately preserve power, and we have to start replacing them. And I think there is a political movement strong enough really to put the pressure on where now they can lose their power if they don't move on this legislation and other pieces like it.
All right. Lastly, I know we're going a little long here today, maybe, but obviously so Tom Steyer, President Steyer, is.
You said President Steyer?
Yeah, President Steyer. Is he not going to? Is he not? I mean, can't we just do it this way? I mean, it seems to me this would be much easier. Why doesn't Tom just say, like, we just do this? We'll do it like on, I don't know, we could do it maybe on ESPN, or maybe we would do it on like E! Television. Have Steyer and have Bloomberg just sit at a table, one of those like felt, poker tables, and just like give them one hand where they just basically say, okay, I'm all in. I'm all in. They got to do it with blindfolds, right? So, and they just they take out the suitcases of cash that they have, and they just shove it into the middle. And whichever one, basically, it's like a blind bid. And whichever one bids more money, they become the Democratic nominee.
Yeah. I'm blown away. I know what you're talking about. I think, what is it? 15% now in South Carolina, or some ridiculous amount.
15% in South Carolina, 12% in the polls in Nevada. He seems to have come out of nowhere, which in terms of those numbers, which is a little bit surprising to me. I mean, but let's not be conspiratorial about these things. And he's now going to be in the debates because of it,
right?
Which is, just a waste of, air and airtime, frankly. But look at this graphic. This is from Rachel Maddow's show. Bloomberg's at $142 million spent. This is in 2020, just in the past, 10 days. Is this right? Is it?
I think this is for all the campaigns so far.
Oh, so far? I think I feel like it's got to be more than that, but $142 million from Bloomberg,
Christ.
67 from Steyer, 10 million Sanders, 10 million Buttigieg, 6 from Yang, 6 million from Trump, 3 from Warren, 2.6 from Biden, Klobuchar for 2.5, Gabbard 1 million, Bennett 1 million. So Steyer dumps in $15 million worth of advertising or something, some godly number in South Carolina and Nevada, because nobody's up on air there. Everybody's putting their resources into Iowa. I happen to think that, depending on who wins Iowa and New Hampshire, that all that stuff is going to become a lot less meaningful, because suddenly there's going to be other, as far as I think people are, it's not inconceivable to me that 15% of Democrats in South Carolina are just like, Tom Steyer is the only person I've even heard of that's running here, because, ads haven't started to run or anything like that. So I think that's going to go away. But it's an interesting way in which you game the system, right? And, at least he's probably got some decent advisors who are smart enough to know, we can go to sort of where the furthest most regions are and where people are polling, but no candidates are competing there yet. We dump all the money in, it'll get us onto the debate, and then we just go from there. And here's the problem. Steyer and Bloomberg have so much money that there is no decision for them to make at any point.
This is true. Particularly in South Carolina, right? So I've been studying Tom Steyer's operation there, his operation in general, because he had so much money, and it's amazing how much you can do when you have cash. I know that's obvious, but when I tell you he has hired some of the smartest people, he's hired some of the best Black African American outreach. I mean, his team in South Carolina is equipped, right? And so I think part of it is not only just the air raid that he's sweeping in with ads, but also some of the people that he's hired. And quite honestly, money in this consulting space, man, money is all that matters. But Tom, I guess Tom is, if you have to take a pick between the sickening billionaire, Tom has at least one or two policies that people can attach to and say, okay, I actually like that. And I'm not talking about the electorate. I'm talking about the people who have agreed to go work for him. Right. I know quite a few people. Let me not exaggerate. I know 2 people who have outright turned down offers from Michael Bloomberg because they just cannot work with anything that he's offering or trying to push. Tom Steyer, at least he's really strong on the environment. And I think that's how he captured a couple of key operatives that are on the ground, specifically in South Carolina, working, canvassing. They are spending a lot on advertising, but they have a lot of people out there canvassing as well.
I've heard that of Bloomberg as well, and that he's paying a
good penny. 30%. He's paying twice as much as everybody else.
Yep. I've heard that. And this is, and I've also now just read today that Bloomberg apparently has told his staff, everybody, you're in it to November. I'm going to pay you to November.
Wow. I did not know that. Wow. That's, I hope they got that in writing, right? I mean, I hope they have that, like, in, not just his word on it. Take him to the bank. He's not going to win, but what he is doing, obviously, is setting himself as a disruptor, right? He will be in a position to disrupt the nominee if it's Bernie Sanders, particularly. So I think that's Bloomberg's number one plan, and probably agree. Warren as well.
He's buying an option. And I don't know, if he even knows the details, but this is NBC News reporting this about Bloomberg. You can put this up there, Matt. It's right here. To fund sizable campaign effort through November, even if he loses the Democratic nomination. Yeah. I mean, I've been saying since day one, this guy is buying an option to run as a third party candidate. That's basically it. And he did it smarter than Howard Schultz, who came out and gave up the ghost early by saying, I'm running for a third party nomination. Run. Howard Schultz should have done what Bloomberg did, but the barista he had hired, Bill Burton and Steve Schmidt, apparently didn't give him, they thought it was more lucrative just to, actually just do that dumb, PR for a book tour, essentially, is what they were doing and getting paid millions of dollars for it. But Bloomberg's vast tech operation supposedly will be redirected to help the eventual nominee, is what they're arguing, right?
I doubt that it sounds good, right? But go ahead.
I think it would be the case if he likes the nominee.
Exactly.
If he doesn't, then he's just going to keep it for him. There are roughly 500 staff members Bloomberg is committed to paying through November, include those in battleground states like Florida, North Carolina, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, as well as in Arizona. Now, I would bet you, too, that there's a longer list, and that list are states that Bloomberg thinks that he might be able to win if he was going against Sanders and Trump. And so I don't know. I mean,
I think at that point, the staffers who are probably all liberal leaning, progressive leaning. I'm not going to say that they'll have the moral fortitude to actually walk away, because right now it's all cute, right? Right now it's all theoretical. They're getting nice size checks and they really see that he's not going to win. I think they're going to have a decision point when he's in there for a third party, and because everyone is really genuinely concerned about Donald Trump. Now, I don't expect a lot of moral high ground because I know a lot of consultants, right? But what I do expect is that there should be other money, a lot of money being poured into who the nominee is, and they'll just start picking off these 500 staffers, 5 or 10 at a time in some key places. That's really the only hope, and really we have to worry about that if it's Sanders. And I also think he's going to pull this play with Warren, because Warren has targeted him very directly with his wealth tax. So hopefully there will be enough money to appeal to the moral fortitude of these consultants working for him.
Yeah, and I think, look, I just want to be clear. I think he's buying an option. I find it very hard to believe that he's going to be able to find any numbers that aren't going to show that there's a substantial risk that he will ensure a Donald Trump victory. And the worst case scenario for Michael Bloomberg is to have spent all this money and bought himself an opportunity to be in the history books as the guy who helped Donald Trump have a second term, and then own all the horridness
everything
that Donald Trump does. I mean, God knows what happens in the second term, right? When he doesn't feel like he has to get reelected and he wants something and someone says, well, attack Iran. Okay. Right? I mean, that all that's going to be weighing on Michael Bloomberg unless the people around him are like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Under a Trump administration, I can take the $5 million I'm going to make in the next 3 months from Michael Bloomberg, and I won't get taxed on it. So,
I mean, those are honestly, those are the decisions that these people are going to make. And that's why we have to talk about campaign finance reform, not just talk about it. We have to do something about it. But the people who are protecting us from campaign finance reforms, not just Republicans, not just the people in these campaigns, the staff, the consultants. I mean, it's a $8 billion every 4-year endeavor. This is a huge industry. People are making millions upon millions of dollars. they may very well side with Bloomberg in this because of how much money is in it and how much they will save with Donald Trump on taxes. It's a sick game out here. And if we don't get money out of politics, we are doomed.
Yep. Ben Dixon, the Benjamin Dixon Show. Folks, check it out now. Go subscribe on your
YouTube
podcast or YouTube, yep. And more importantly, Ben, as always, a real pleasure. I think, man.
Sam, thank you. Let's not let it be 3 months.
It won't. I don't know what happened at the end of the year. Everything got all messed up.
Thanks for having me, man.
All right, man. Talk to you later.
Take care.
All right, folks. We're gonna head to the fun half. We're a little bit pressed for time today. Just want to remind you, it is your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. Also, sign up for the AM Quickie. When you go and subscribe to it, listen to it a couple of times, I think you'll enjoy it. People get hooked. And it's about 5 minutes a day, and we're getting it out earlier, and we're making plans right now. By this time in a week or two, we should be getting it out the door by 8 a.m. Every morning, Eastern. So
At the latest. So that you will be, but that may be it, guaranteed 8 a.m. delivery. And so you can listen to it on your way to walking to the subway. You can listen to it, dropping off the kids. No swearing. Just a little bit of exasperation sometimes, and my deep, deep morning voice. Also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Today is Friday. Michael, Tuesday happened 3 days ago.
Indeed. What happened on Tuesday was Drew Mikhael of Queen's University in Belfast, and we talked about how this escalation against Iran is undermining the post-sectarian movements that have been emerging, particularly in Lebanon, and also some of the origins and history of Shia politics. Then Matt Christman from Chapo Trap House came on. We had a really great time. We even talked about the death instinct and the fascist psyche, which felt deeply relevant in a way that was really uncomfortable. And we covered a whole bunch more stuff obviously in the post game. Grab your tickets February 7th. We're a month away from the Bell House, over halfway sold out. So if we're on the same trajectory as Philly, we will sell out. So get it quick. Patreon.com/TMBS. Thanks to our first 100K subs on YouTube. Appreciate it.
Sorry, didn't have my soundboard up. I was going to give you a fan.
Did a hell of a job of your job.
You know what? I actually do feel like Elizabeth Warren and Matt is Joe Biden at times.
Did a hell of a job of your job.
Check out the Antifada at patreon.com/the Antifada. And Matt.
Literary hangover tomorrow. A 1708 satirical poem called The Sotweed Factor, about a guy who tries to sell tobacco in America and finds that it's all a bunch of we're all a bunch of swindlers over here. And we'll talk about that. Plantations are sort of prisons, and we'll talk about it tomorrow.
Means and Ways at Old Sounds tonight at 8 p.m.
Right.
I'll put a link in the.
Brendan is a damn rock musician. Guy is a friggin'
We got
star.
other bands on there too. Big Band, Little Slugger, Plight, and our band Means and Ways.
Okay, yeah. Will you remind me of that after the show? I think Mila may be making some cash tonight on babysitting.
Nice.
It's a lot. Everybody else plugs all these lame politics podcasts, and Brendan's coming through. It's like, I got a set.
Here it is.
It's awesome.
Means Ways.
Means and Ways, styled with a /. Just looks cool.
Okay. 646-257-3920 is the number. You can join us in the fun half. See you there. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous. You're a little bit upset. You're riled up.
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
That's a good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 eighths. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Rand Paul.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agreed.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook. Throw our hands up.
Ooh.
Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey! Shut up!
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.